Thank you for joining us. So this is the 2021 Trends, the Research and Development Tax Credit for the medical device industry. Come to you from Layton. First, we're going to start with just the introductions here. Excuse me 1 second. Perfect. So these are the presenters for today. Myself, my name is Robert Marquardt. I am a Research and Development Tax Credit Consultant with Layton. My focus is to identify companies and really connect them with the technical and tax experts that can help them with their research and development and free up more cash flow in their business. And then I'm going to pass it over to Evangelia, where she'll introduce herself.
Thank you, Rob. So my name is Evangelia. I'm a senior technical consultant here at Layton. I've been with the company for about a year now, and my background is in mechanical engineering and robotics, and I also have a PhD in material science. So my research focus was the electrochemical synthesis of metallic alloys and characterization as well. And for potential applications in environmental remediation, energy efficient devices, as well as micro and nano robots. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jonathan Ashton. I'm one of the financial R&D tax credit consultants here at Layton. I've been with the company for almost 3 years now, and this coming March. And my background, previously I've worked at KPMG in the state and local tax income and incentives team. Worked for a couple of corporate tax departments, Works USA, a diversified financial company, Atmos Energy, and now I'm here at Layton.
Perfect. Thank you both. All right. So as we get into what we're going to be discussing today, we're going to start out with kind of a really high-level, brief introduction of what the Research and Development Tax Credit is. Then we're going to dive into what sort of expenses can be claimed. And then obviously something that's a little closer to everybody on the call, how is that going to benefit you? How is that going to get money back into your business? And then we'll look at kind of a scope of some of the research and development that we've seen in the medical device industry, as well as some of the trends that we're seeing as we go into 2021. And then we'll take a look at a couple case studies with companies that we work with to give you a real life example of how this process would work for them. Then we'll come back in and talk about what the Layton process looks like. And then we'll save about 15 minutes at the end for any questions that you may have. All right, so if we look at it, what is the Research and Development Tax Credit? So the Research and Development Tax Credit is really a tax incentive that the government has put in place to reward companies for creating jobs and new technologies. So the way they define that is if you're creating or improving a product or a process in your business, and that's a dollar for dollar credit that offsets either your income tax or your payroll tax liability. So what does it mean to your business? It means an immediate reduction of your income and or payroll taxes, which in turn would free up cash flow in your business, increase your business valuation, and the credits that you do not use are be able to be banked for future income tax liability. All right, now I'm going to pass it over to Jonathan.
Yes, so the R&D tax credit in America has been around since the early 80s. And when Congress was coming up with the idea for this R&D tax credit, they didn't want to incentivize any one particular industry or field or type of development over any of the other options that people were working on throughout the economy. So they came up with what's called the 4-part test of qualified activities. Rob? The first test is the business component test. In order for a project to be qualifying under the legislation, we need to identify a new or improved product, process, technique, formula, invention, or piece of software. That's going to be the foundation of identifying your R&D project and the underlying expenses that are going into it. The next test is to confirm that this business component is technological in nature and relies on the fundamentals of the hard sciences. Here we're looking at physics, biological sciences, software development, chemistry, mechanical engineering, basically anything that is using those hard sciences. What's not going to qualify are your social sciences, general studies, consumer preference surveys, marketing surveys, and the like. The third test, probably one of the most crucial, is that elimination of uncertainty. Once we've identified the business component and confirmed that it's technological in nature, we have to understand how a business is going about developing that business component. We have to confirm that a business is coming from a place where they don't know what the final outcome or solution is going to look like at the onset of a project, and they have to go through a series of trials to develop that product. And through those trials, you're actually eliminating uncertainty. You're becoming more knowledgeable about the way that you want to proceed with this development process, and you're eliminating options that are not going to work. And the final test is the process of experimentation. This ties in all of the three components that we've previously identified. And this is, again, along with the elimination of uncertainty, crucial to developing and confirming that this is a qualified project. The process of experimentation is the method by which you are analyzing your various options of development. Maybe you've got a current business component and you've developed it to a certain level. One option would be for the business would be to just keep on with the way things are going right now. As you're considering alternatives, however, maybe you can ramp up your production capacity. Maybe you can make it more secure. Maybe more less redundancy, more redundancy. Basically, what this experimentation is, you're analyzing different options for your business, where you're going to put that capital expenditure and how you're going to go about improving that business component to stay competitive in the market. One thing to note about the improved business component itself, it does not have to be new to the industry. It only has to be new or improved for your own business. So if you have a competitor in the field that has already developed a similar technology, as long as you're developing it new for your own business, we can still qualify that project. Next slide, please. After we've confirmed that your business has met the 4-part test, that's when we get to have the fun and start looking at some of the qualified expenses. And this is sort of my specialty on the financial side. So likewise with the 4-part test, there are 4 qualified categories that are eligible for claiming. As you can imagine, the salaries of those directly involved in the R&D, these could be your engineers, your developers, chemists, mechanical engineers, and the like. Those that are actively developing the product or advancement, they're going to be the primary salaries that we look at. In addition to their salaries, you're allowed one level of direct supporting or one level of direct supervising, so say a project manager, as well as directly supporting salary time. Now, directly supporting salary time can be a bit confusing, but it's typically understood as you've got a primary engineer that's coming up with a product. Well, this directly supporting person may be the person on the assembly line that is fitting together the prototype. They may not be actively thinking up or designing the product, but they're actively involved in putting it together. What's not going to qualify in this directly supporting category is going to be your back offices, accounting department, HR, and the like. While they are integral to a business, they aren't essential to the R&D project on hand. After salaries, we can also look at contractor costs. Contractor costs are generally claimed at 65% of the amount of outlay to that business or vendor. There are some scenarios where we can bump that up to 75% in the case where you're looking at working with a university or a research consortium. And similarly, that could potentially also get bumped up to 100% in the field of engineering, energy research. Third category of eligible expenses is going to be the raw materials and supplies. What we won't include here are depreciable assets. So if you're putting in a new piece of equipment, a centrifuge, a rotor of some sort, because it's got a lifespan of greater than a year, we're going to depreciate that and amortize the value of that piece of technology. And so what we will actually include are going to be the raw materials for prototyping, supplies. This could be reagents. If you're looking at genomics, it could be like DNA nucleotides, small beakers and the like. If you're building a system, it could be the metals and the plastics. A lot of businesses these days are using 3D printing, and there's a lot of reagents that are going involved in developing those prototypes that are going to be 3D printed, so we can include all that. And so basically everything that is going into those prototypes. One thing that we can also include is first batch test runs of supplies. So if you have a manufacturing line of a product that you've developed and you want to test that manufacturing line out for efficiency and any errors, as you're going through it, maybe you're producing 10,000 widgets on that first batch test run. We could potentially include all of that material, even if it's a finished product, assuming that it is that first test run of the assembly line manufacturing process. The fourth category of eligible expenses is going to be externally licensed computer use. Back when the credit first came out, most businesses didn't have accelerated computing capacity, and so they would go and rent access to a university supercomputer or something. This is back in the 80s. These days, the credit has evolved to be more responsive to the development through the cloud. So if you're relying on AWS, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud, and the likes, those types of services that are actively renting out computer space and power, those are the types of expenses that we're going to look. We want to be able to isolate any expenses for a developmental instance in the cloud versus a live product version. That's very important. But as we look at your projects, there may be a lot of scope here for some expenses to be included. Next slide, please. There are, well, as Rob has mentioned prior, there are two main methods to recoup these credits that we identify. The traditional method is to take the credit against corporate income tax liability, or if you're a pass-through entity, pass those credits on to the owners, whether they're individuals or corporations. The credit itself can offset income tax liability associated with the underlying business. So if you are in a loss situation as a pass-through entity, and your K1 is reporting a loss, there's a chance that you may not be able to realize that benefit until future income. Certainly, we'd also look to see if you're getting a W-2 wage or some other form of reimbursement from the business for your efforts. In addition to the federal credit, there's a lot of state offerings. I think 37, 38 states also offer a comparable R&D tax credit. Some are virtually identical to the federal benefit. Others are even more lucrative. Some states don't offer a benefit at all. So it's very important to determine where you're located, where your employees are located, where the work is being done. For the federal credit, the work has to be done in the United States or Puerto Rico or one of the other US territories. for it to be an eligible expense. So if you've got contractors overseas, maybe you've got developers in Eastern Europe that are writing code for you, unfortunately, those expenses wouldn't qualify. But if those developers are in-house or in the United States, that's where you're gonna get a benefit in this credit. After looking at the income tax credit, obviously some businesses that are startups may have an uncertain future on when they may start paying corporate income tax or passing on income to their owners. In those scenarios, for businesses that are under 5 years old and have a maximum of 5 million in revenue in a given year, there's an option to claim the credit against payroll tax liability. That window for payroll tax credit is 5 years, beginning with the year of first establishing revenue. That can be as simple as having $1 of interest income in a bank account. That can start your clock. So it's very important to identify when that first year of revenue is, and that's the starting year for up to 5 years. The limit on the payroll credit is $250,000 annually. And the method is you'll apply for the credit on your income tax return. You'll check a box that says I want to apply it as payroll credit, and that benefit starts being realized the quarter after which you file. So if we're looking at the current 2020 tax filing, if you're able to file by March 31st, you can start receiving that benefit in the April to June quarter. If you go through a payroll provider, many will file a reconciliation payroll filing at the end of the quarter. So that April to June quarter would be filed on a 941 within July. But some payroll providers will allow you to start realizing that benefit upfront in real time. So be sure to look at who your payroll provider is for those options. Next slide, please. And I think I'm going to hand this off to Evangelia now. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. So there are many different areas in the medical device industry where we see R&D. So in terms of equipment, we have both in the dental field and the medical field, equipment such as intraoral scanners, CBCTs, MRIs, anything along those lines. And then different implants, prosthetics, orthotics, rehabilitation devices, crutches, braces, motorized wheelchairs, CPAP devices. All of these fall within the realm, as well as vision and hearing aids. Then there's also increasing use of virtual and augmented reality in different medical procedures. And there's, with the increasing connectivity of medical devices nowadays, there's also the issue of cybersecurity. So a lot of software implementation going on in that field in order to safeguard against potential hacking. So that's a major security risk, which can have even life-threatening implications. And of course, different surgical instruments and even surgical robots that we see increasingly lately for minimally invasive procedures. So these are just some of the areas. So in terms of 2021 specifically, we have several trends in the R&D technologies where we see that there's R&D is ramping up continuously. One area, as mentioned, is virtual reality. So here we have from robot-assisted rehabilitation, which is something I also worked on during my master's, to helping improve surgical outcomes, where you can visualize an entire organ and have 3D views, view it from different angles, and plan an entire surgery practice. Also use that to train future surgeons, for example. Then we have what we call wearable fitness. So that would be fitness trackers that everybody nowadays is familiar with, which can basically track the steps you take, the distance you've walked, your heart rate, even how long you sleep. And then we also have smart clothing technology. So for example, electromyography can be used to monitor muscle activation, see which muscle groups are firing. If you're stressing, for example, one side of your body more than the other, help you correct posture and help athletes increase their performance. Then in terms of what we call the Internet of Medical Things, we have increasingly medical devices are interconnected. They can collect and analyze and transmit data to healthcare providers. So that combination with patient information can be really powerful. It can save billions of dollars in the future with remote patient monitoring, and it can even help improve medication adherence. So there can even be kiosks in the future where patients can go, and those can provide connectivity to the healthcare provider, especially in rural areas where there might be such a connectivity problem, and that can aid in remote monitoring. Then we also have surgical robots. These enable doctors to perform surgeries with higher precision and accuracy and flexibility than before. And mostly they relate to minimally invasive procedures. So you don't have to have a major procedure as before. Just using these robots, and they improve, recovery times, they improve patient outcomes. Then we have, in addition, computer vision, for example, which is used increasingly, artificial intelligence, machine learning algorithms towards what is called computer aided detection and diagnosis as well. So for example, a software that can detect breast abnormalities in an MRI image, or diagnose diabetic retinopathy through eye images. So that's a very powerful new technology as well. We also have software as a medical device. So that's basically software that's not part of the hardware. It's a standalone piece of software, and that can also be used for various purposes, such as it can analyze an MRI scan, and it can help the radiologist find and diagnose a cardiovascular condition, for example. You can have a mobile application that can combine the data from a blood glucose meter and the patient's dietary information and recommend insulin dosages. Or you can have a software that will analyze the patient's medical history and diagnostics and propose what treatment might be most appropriate. And then we have genomics. There's a particular example that we will talk about afterwards. So we have different companies now working on whole genome sequencing, and that's a technique that can also help revolutionize medicine. We can even tailor disease prevention and treatment to each individual's genes and their lifestyle and their environment. And finally, there's also 3D printing. So this is used, for example, to 3D print orthopedic devices, implants, surgical instruments as well, and increasingly seen in dental restorations. So we have a few case studies that we've worked with companies in various different areas, just to demonstrate some of the potential benefits. So one of those companies developed a robotic system to assist surgery. And some of the eligible areas of R&D there would pertain to analyzing, for example, motion data and improving the stability and the functionality of the equipment, modifying the hand controllers, giving the surgeon more flexibility, making it more comfortable, making the procedure more comfortable for the surgeon. Also, this was aided by a VR system, so a headset to further assist, and there was also AI algorithms just to decrease all of the random motion and jitters that can occur. So many different areas of R&D. And in terms of the potential benefit, so the company had more than 60 employees. So more than 50 of those employees were highly qualified. So they were heavily involved in the R&D, more than 80% involvement actually. So we were able to capture more than 80% of their salary as a qualified research expenditure, and the credit in the end, the combination of federal, state, and state credit for 1 year was over $1 million. So for the next case study is a whole genome sequencing technology company. There were many different fields here of research. It's highly interdisciplinary. So going from biosensor development and microfluidics and nanofabrication to the sequencing chemistry itself, and then processing the signal and interpreting that data, and all the way to the instruments that collect that data and analyze it. So in terms of the benefit for that company, it had over 50 employees. More than 40 of those, again, were highly qualified. They were heavily involved in R&D, and we also captured a significant portion of the supplies. So 20% of their overall supplies were qualified as a research expenditure. And the credit finally for the company, the combination of federal and state, was again over $1 million. So for the federal, it was a new company, so they even benefited from the payroll credit. They got the maximum amount, which is the $250,000, and then the rest, can be used, for example, as carry forward, or depending on your particular situation, offsetting your tax liability. And so in the third example, this was a company that developed a standalone system. This system helped optimize surgical workflows. It would augment intraoperative images, the interpretation of those images, and ultimately enhancing surgical outcomes just by correcting image distortion and allowing surgeons to during the surgery, analyze critical factors and modify the procedure as necessary. So various different algorithms there, image processing, tracking algorithm, an image detection algorithm. So it was all software development, but the benefit at the end was also substantial for this company. It had more than 25 employees. More than 20 of those employees were qualified at various percentages, but the average was 68%. So that's a high qualifying amount as well. And the credit was over 100,000 in federal credit for 1 year. And I think I'll hand it over back to Rob to continue with our process.
Thanks, Evangelia. So now I'll describe to you kind of a little bit how Layton works and what our goal through this process is. So as you can see, our goal is a minimally disruptive claiming process for our clients. So that's really kind of a fancy way of saying our goal is to keep our clients in their business. And that's why we have our technical team and our tax team here to really help understand the entire scope of your claim. So the way this process would start is with an initial assessment. So that's really just a high level conversation to kind of discuss your company, the projects that you've been working on, and establish if there is a claim there, if this is something that you can benefit from at this time, if it's worth going through the process. Once we move through that, we have our engagement. So the engagement's kind of your more in-depth conversation where you're going to be with the technical team and the tax team, and they're going to start building out your claim and get a real more in-depth understanding of what kind of credit we're looking for. And then our next step is our report writing. So when we do any claim, we substantiate it. We write a technical report in the background that's going to tie each piece of your credit back to your qualified activities that you've done throughout the process. And like I said, we do this to keep you in your business. So we work through a lot of your normal business information that you have through payroll information, subcontracted costs, material costs, things like that. And then we deliver the claim to you is the last step of that process. So on a payroll credit, as Jonathan had mentioned, your offset is going to be in the quarter after you file that. And for the traditional credit, you're going to offset your current year liability. And if it's your first time claiming and we're looking back, you're able to amend your return and get that refund back from the IRS, usually within 90 days. And then any credit that's not used, you're able to carry forward. So we have a simple 4-step process. And like I said, really the goal is to keep you in your business as much as possible and maximize that claim for you. So when you look at the claim, it's not just a one-time thing. It's not just going through this process and understanding that you have this eligibility. This is something that companies are rewarded for continued innovation and continuing to grow your research and development. Some of the best practices and clients that we've worked with over the years in terms of helping them realize an additional claim and help their business, building this into your financial plan. We work with a lot of clients that see their credit and understand what's going to be coming back and reinvest that money back into additional research and development, helping them further in the coming year. Understanding the IRS legislation. So going through this process, you're able to get a better idea of exactly what they're looking at, some things that may apply or may not apply, and just a better understanding of things that go in there to make sure that you're adhering to the guidelines that they have. And then real-time tracking. I mean, this is critically important as we start a new year for many people right now. Being able to capture your activities real time will really help you maximize the claim that you're going to be able to get as you come to the end of 2021, because you're able to track all of that information that you're going to need in a real-time atmosphere. And then lastly, by tracking that information as well, it's just going to help you on the back end to be able to substantiate any claim that you do have and any credit that you prepare on that side of it. So lastly is kind of who Layton is. So we have been around since 1997. We operate in 12 countries currently and have 33 offices. We work, as you can see, with thousands of clients. We have thousands of employees, and we're continuing to grow. We are, a specialist in terms of the research and development, especially in the States here. We've followed this credit around in different countries where it becomes permanent. And our goal is to help our clients grow and help their innovation by becoming a strategic partner in your business and helping free up cash flow in your business, but also identify and help you reinvest that back into your business and grow. Our dedicated team of experts in terms of the scientists, the computer engineers, the civil engineers, mechanical engineers, as well as the tax accountants and attorneys. We're motivated throughout this process to, one, help you identify the maximum claim that you've earned throughout the year. And secondly, give you the peace of mind that this process is going to be done properly for you and you're going to have that documentation to back it up. And the last piece of it is our goal, as we said before, is to really keep you in your business, running your business and doing what you want to be doing every single day.